It's time for the Voice of Reason podcast. Here are your hosts, Sean Phillips, Andy Van Beber, and Travis Kirkendall.
Ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for joining us live tonight. It is Thursday, August 15th, the great year of 2024. My name is Sean Phillips. As always, I'm joined alongside my co-host, the great and powerful Mr. Andrew J. Van Beber. How are you doing
today? I am thoroughly exhausted.
Me too.
First day, well, we had folks back at school today. We had kids. We had kids at school. Well, it was back to school night, and it was back to school. And Travis should be proud of me too. We got back into the gym this week. I've done a day just straight cardio, and then the last today and yesterday I did straight weightlifting. I'm using machine weights. I'm not comfortable with doing free weights. So machine weights are still kicking my butt.
Are you going up to the YMCA there?
YMCA
next year?
Here in town. Shout out to the Louisiana YMCA, Twin Pike Family YMCA. Great facility.
Awesome.
Great staff there. How are things going for you?
So far, so good. I actually last week for a day, and then today, this evening, did a little bit last week for a wrestling training. So that was that was a lot of fun. Wrestling training. So that was.
Here we go. Sorry.
Oh, you're good. And so same thing, just kind of slowly but surely trying to find our groove here now that the wedding is come and gone. Now we're just kind of trying to get settled in, and it's one of those things where it's tough because I got to leave and then come back, and so this is probably, of all the moves that we've had recently, of all the shuffling around, this has definitely been like the most. A lot of stuff is happening all at once, kind of move that I've had. So,
life is coming.
But no complaints. Just, I'm very excited because I think after I get back from this school and work starts up, there'll be a routine, and then we'll finally kind of get settled into just a little bit more normalcy of being able to spend kind of specific days with the girls and not have to worry about just cramming time in before I've got to go somewhere.
Right.
So no complaining. We're definitely at the home stretch of it all, which is good. I'm ready to get more settled, get more things unpacked, and get to work on the house, which we just haven't really been able to do with everything going on. So when I get back, we're really going to be able to kind of get into the fixer side of the fixer-upper. So.
Well, and that's, what, getting your feet established and getting into the new, it's been almost 20 years since I've been a newlywed, but I tell you what, you've not only newlywed, but, dad and building, you've taken on a lot of, to say that you've done some challenging things in the first year of your marriage is an understatement. So, yeah, we
100%. Yeah.
We start school on Monday or Tuesday. I'm sorry, Tuesday. Don't want to jump the gun too big there, but I'm looking forward to that. One other thing I do want to mention tonight. We are streaming live to TikTok for the first time tonight. Not too sure on how that's gonna. I got put in TikTok jail a ways back, and I was like, sorry, okay, won't do it anymore. Sorry, but we'll leave that for another day. So for folks who are watching us on TikTok tonight, welcome to the Voice of Reason. Man, there are some interesting things that have happened uh, in the last couple of days. I guess we'll start off just with what has been coming in over the line over the last 24 to 48 hours, and that is Ukraine has pushed into Russia.
Oh
Um,
wow.
the Ukraine has moved into what is known it is a
Sorry.
northeastern region of Russia known as the Kursk Oblast. An oblast, by the way, and I'm going to be using the term oblast tonight. Oblast is basically a name after the fall of the Soviet Union. An oblast is a name given to like a region of control, kind of like a state or something like that. So when I say the Kursk Oblast, so it's on the north. It would be on the northeastern border, I believe. Let me see. I think I have a map of it here. Yeah. So the Kursk Oblast is on the northeast. I can't find it here though, but the northeast region off of the Ukraine and Russia. And so far, what's been going on up there, latest update, and I found an interesting website too for anybody who wants to I've heard of this before, but I've never looked at it. It's called the Institute for the Study of War, and if you want a no nonsense, non biased, straight up, just straight reporting of what's going on and they cover more than any other. I mean, they talk about more than just the Ukraine. They talk about other wars. But this was updated. This was updated 3 hours ago. Okay, it's 9:05 now. This was updated at 6:05. Vladimir Zelensky held a meeting with his Ukrainian high command and heard reports from military leadership that the situation in Kursk Oblast, Ukrainian Commander-in-Chief Colonel, that long name there, announced to the Ukrainian high command that Ukraine has created a military commandant's office in the Kursk Oblast, which is in Russia, and they're maintaining law and order and ensuring the priority needs of the population. And some other things that they've talked about. So they have advanced at the beginning of the day today. They have advanced 1.5. Now, I mean, it's not like they're deep. 1.5 kilometers into the Kursk Oblast, and they are continually updating the situation. Now, what is and go on from there, and it says that several Ukrainian outlets reported today that sources within Ukraine's security service, Ukrainian forces took over 102 Russian military personnel from the 488th Motorized Rifle Regiment. So they've got prisoners of war. They're actually talking with Russia about a prisoner of war exchange. Russia, and where Russia is in the Donetsk Oblast which is in the southeastern region of the Ukraine. And so, according to this report, and I mean, there's a lot, and again, I would tell people this, I just tripped upon this site tonight, and this is it talks about how Russia is moving, well, it says several battalions. How many are in, what's a battalion? How many people, what's a normal battalion? I mean, how many are in a battalion? Is that like 1,000?
It's a pretty large element. It really just depends on like what, I mean, the job is.
This one's got 1,000. This one battalion. Where was it at? I saw.
Because you got to think. So like, I would maybe say. So if a battalion is made up of like hypothetically 4 or 5 different companies, it really just depends. And each company has like 200 people, so we like 1,000.
Okay.
For a battalion, and then it just depends because a brigade is then several battalions. So yeah, it really just depends.
It says Russian forces have reportedly are redeploying up to 11 battalions from the Donetsk Oblast to the Kursk Oblast. Okay.
So that would maybe be like, I don't know.
10,000, 11,000 guys.
Yeah, maybe 10,000 soldiers, maybe a little less. Yeah.
So what's your initial thoughts of, I mean, we haven't talked about the Ukraine in a heartbeat. I mean,
Yeah.
it's been a hot minute since we've talked about this, and I know you're probably, I just want you, because I'm sure you're hearing of this a lot for the first time, but what's your initial, I mean, thoughts about this moving forward? Is this, I mean, we talked about this. I look back in our director. We haven't talked about the Ukraine war in 2 years. So this is kind of interesting
Hmm.
how, this is the first reports that I've seen of actual Ukrainian presence in, albeit 1.5 kilometers into Russia. They're in Russia.
Well, it's interesting. I'd be interested to kind of see how much ground they've actually broken into Russia, compared to, how far into the Ukraine the Russian military has gotten in the time they've been there. Um, no, it's very interesting, for them to kind of take the initiative into the assault. Definitely American taxpayer dollars at work.
Well, and that
But
and that
there's a very good chance too that Zelensky, and his cabinet are kind of looking at the situation in the United States on if Donald Trump was to become president, what might happen to some of the finances that are making its way into the Ukraine.
hmm
So if Trump, is to actually do what he says he's going to do and stop sending as much funding over to the Ukrainian government for this war effort, which so it could be, they're looking to go on the attack and maybe establish themselves in a way where they kind of have to receive aid from the United States, or I mean, even in an even more desperate act, um, try to really make a big initiative to move even further and make a go at the Russian government.
well, and so you talk about how much aid. I was looking up some stats here, and under so under since April of this year up to, and this is I guess the last time that they have us. I'm not seeing anything else, but we have given over 175 billion dollars in aid to
Mm-hmm.
the Ukraine, and not to, and I mean that's including cash, that's including uh, what, like the Reaper drones, and some of these I'm seeing a lot. When you follow, Travis got me following this Northern Provisions on Instagram, and you see
Oh
some,
yeah, yeah, yeah.
and these guys are showing like Russian guys who are showing like these little tiny drones that are just loaded with little bombs, like grenade.
Mm-hmm.
I guess you could say like grenade things that are they're flying these drones just dead into these guys, and just, I mean,
Yeah,
that's brutal
UAVs are a
warfare.
pretty horrifying thing. In the military, we kind of call them a poor man's air force.
Yeah.
And they are, nowadays. Back in the day, it was IEDs, and worrying about what was buried underneath you. In some instances, in Iraq and Afghanistan, they'd be kind of dropped on you from overpasses, if there were overpasses, or from above, like buildings. But now you can go and buy a $55 drone
Yeah.
online,
Yeah.
and strap a mortar to it. You can strap a grenade to it. You can strap C4 to it, and essentially, yeah, detonate it on your enemy. And that's what a lot of them are doing. The UAV um, advancements over the last couple of years have been huge. China um, has made a full fledged effort into upping the ante with their UAVs. And in the United States, we've gotten really big on counter UAV measures and instruction and training, because they are here to stay. Those drones are here to stay. Unfortunately, in modern warfare.
One of the things that, I mean, obviously this hasn't been visited by the Geneva at least I don't know. The Geneva
Mm-hmm.
Convention hasn't looked at stuff like this. For those of you who don't know, the Geneva Convention is basically, was it World War, I don't know if it was World War One or World War Two. The Geneva Convention. I think it was between World War One and World War Two. The rules of the
Mm-hmm.
Geneva Convention were set up saying, okay, you know if you have prisoners of war, you have to treat them this way. It was World War Two because World War One they used, like when they used notch, they in World War One, like in trench warfare, they notched their bayonets, which was, they considered that to be inhumane. They stopped, the use of mustard gas or any kind of chemical warfare and stuff like that. And this is, like you said, a poor man's Air Force to say, okay, I'm going to load up this drone and I'm going to just to fly it into somebody, and you say, I'm going to blow you up on impact. I guess that's the same idea of saying,
Mm-hmm.
well, I'm going to lob a hand grenade, or I'm going to, shoot a rocket launcher at you or something like that. I mean, I guess that's in the same kind of category. But for Russia to, what the whole surprise with me in this thing, in this effort so far, is how Russia is kind of, creeping on the radar. And I'm kind of like you. I'm waiting to see what's going to happen with the election. If
Mm-hmm.
Kamala, yeah, I mean, I think it's going to be more of the same. If Kamala gets reelected, then we're going to see more cash pouring into the Ukraine. But is Trump gonna stay on his word and say, okay, if we pull out of the, if I'm he on various occasions he said we're going to cut back on what we send to them. He said,
Mm-hmm.
if I get elected, we're going to end the war in Ukraine in 2 days, kind of thing. And this is one of those instances where I'm really curious as to see how this is going to be approached. But this when this came across my phone this morning, that Ukrainian forces were in Russia, and
Mm-hmm.
and I clicked on it. It was a BBC link, and it was only like a paragraph and a half covering what
Mm.
was going on. Why? And this is the other thing. If you go to I haven't been to Fox's webpage or CNN's webpage, but I'm why isn't this becoming more, you know is this yeah, because I'm looking at Fox right now, and like the stuff, you know Trump and Harris, and Matthew Perry's death, and there's nothing on
Oh,
the
that was
front.
another. Yeah, I saw that. I saw that too. That there's been arrests made in
Yeah,
his death.
that was actually one of the other topics we were going to get to tonight if we had time.
Hmm.
But holy cow, why isn't this being, I mean, I guess one point, I mean, when you're talking about war though, but I mean, just the fact to say, hey, we've pushed into Russia. Interesting thought. I just thought that was, to bring that up. We've talked about the Ukraine in the past, and so
Hmm.
just wanted to throw that out there tonight. So
Yeah,
that,
and I think too, a lot of stuff now is just kind of like it did in Afghanistan and Iraq for a while. Um, a lot of things just that can be big things and are big things. Just kind of you know oh, you're good. They just kind of come and go by the wayside, and
yeah,
um, unless you're really nose deep in it and you kind of understand a lot of this stuff. Like there's other. That's the unfortunate side of it all, is this, there's other things going on, and there's still the conflict in the Middle East, since 8,000 years ago. but
Yeah.
continues to be a problem today.
Literally
Um,
1,000 years ago.
yeah, I think that's one of the the other frustrating parts of that whole situation is that is not new.
No, no,
What's
no,
happening there is not new.
no.
Anywho, that's a whole different topic for another
Yeah,
episode. But I just think that when there's football season right around the corner, Americans are starting to worry more about their fantasy
fantasy
draft.
league. Yeah, yeah,
The Olympics were going on for 2 weeks, or not 2 weeks. They ended just a few days ago. There's just a lot going on, and I think that because of that, things that would have been a big deal if it would have been the main thing in the news would have kind of stuck out a little bit more.
yeah. I
But
mean,
that's kind of why a lot of those
so. I
things go
mean,
to
I
the
think
wayside.
it's not a, it's not a, what do you want to call it? A news dropper or a big.
Because I'll be honest, like I feel like in the last year, um, in the last couple of months for sure, the only time you really hear anything on like mainstream press about the Ukrainian war is anytime they like allocate money that's going to go over there, and then they just throw the number around. Oh, we're sending $200 billion over there. We're sending this many $1 billion
Yeah,
over there.
and
Whatever it is,
right.
that is kind of what makes the press and be like, why? What's going on? It's
What's
like,
going
well,
on? Is there is
now they're on the counterattack.
right?
There's a lot of reasons for a lot of different things. Um, and so, hopefully there'll be an end in sight, but we'll just have to wait and see. And that's tough too, because when you look at the progress that the Ukraine has made and the defense that they've done, it's one of those things where it is a shame that if Trump was to become president and we just it's a double edged sword, because if you just stop funding them, and then all of a sudden Russia goes on the attack and has backing from places like China or Iran, any place else that has money that is willing to shell out just to stick it to the United States, and then we have another situation where the Ukraine is overtaken again by Russia. So it's a mixed bag.
We're gonna.
Um,
I mean, do you?
Again, I wish I could say that money was going elsewhere, but it's like
Yeah,
at the end of the day, what would it be going towards? It wouldn't be going towards me. So
it's not helping out people who need. Yeah, I mean,
mhm, yeah.
I think, and it's safe to say before we move on to our next topic, with a broad scope of with what's going on. When you look, you mentioned the Middle East, and with Israel, with Iran, with what North Korea. In Ukraine and Russia, I feel like things have kind of been put on hold for a while until I'm 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 just kind of wondering how much the world is watching our election and
Mhm.
seeing what kind of factor that's going to be playing moving forward, and we
Was it?
kind of
I mean, isn't it interesting how, not to cut you off, but isn't it interesting how I feel like we almost all watched a man get shot in the head on TV just realistically a few weeks ago,
hmm
and I feel like now it's so brushed over to he's the devil, he's the devil, he's the devil again.
yeah,
Like, and mind you, I hate that I have to say it 100 times. We are, this podcast is by no means a Trump pushing podcast, polar opposite probably. Um, we are so fledged down the middle, but it is crazy to me that there's like the the narrative from the left now is that JD Vance and Trump are weird, and that Trump is too old to be president. Where if
yeah,
we don't forget, just a few weeks ago, those same people that are saying, well, he is too old, were also saying Biden's fine. Biden is
our
totally fine. It's
our
also weird that,
our geriatric is better than
I
your
find it
geriatric.
very interesting that you have Kamala Harris, who's preaching all these things that are going to change. And like we talked about last week, Joe has been absent. He has been MIA since he's announced that he is stepping down. So aside from a video that I saw where he told somebody, "You're stuck with me for a couple more months," um,
God,
so there's,
oh my God,
I don't know. I just feel like we're in a very weird time, and I feel like we always say it. There's so much narrative that's being shoved in every which way direction, but I'm one of those people that I look at it from a realistic standpoint and I go, how is someone that was trending so negatively, there were so many negative things said about this individual, that all of a sudden is neck and neck in the polls just because they have the nomination now? It's things like that that just don't make sense to me. Legitimately, I just don't understand how that's
The
possible. And I
well,
think it's just more of a narrative spin.
the narrative. Yeah, I was just going to say the narrative that's being pushed by any. It's really what's. I hate to say it like you said, but what's trending? Like you said, what's trending? What's trending? I don't know if you did. You get a chance to watch Jon Stewart and Mark Cuban interview Mark Cuban the other night?
I did not.
It was interesting. So Mark Cuban, if you guys didn't see on, I think it was Monday night, Trump did a town hall live thing with,
On Twitter, correct?
it was on, yeah, with X with Elon Musk,
Mm-hmm.
and they invited Elon Musk said, I don't want to debate. I want to invite Kamala Harris and Donald Trump to come here to X headquarters or whatever, and let's just talk about stuff. Let's not have a debate. Let's just have. And Kamala turned him down, and
Mm-hmm.
and so Donald, I mean, Trump had pretty much free range to go uninterrupted. But what was ironic about that is as you're following the feed, as you're watching the feed, right next, if you could be following Kamala and she's slamming everything that he's saying. I'm like, why not?
Mm-hmm.
And
Yep.
that's the other thing. Why isn't ever since, I don't know if you've picked up on this or not, but ever since Kamala has gotten the nod, I mean, she'll be official. What the convention starts on today's the 15th, so the convention starts on the 18th, I believe. The Democratic National Convention starts on the 18th, and she has her press presence has decreased exponentially. She has not made public statements to the press. I mean, she's done rallies. Her and Tim Walz have done rallies, but she hasn't made direct talks to the media. And part of me is wondering. I'm like, okay, are they trying to? I mean, are they shielding her? Trump's already going to the well of, well, is she Indian or is she black or is she this? And I'm like,
Which, my God, like, I tell you what, that's like one of the, again, you look at the Trump campaign of they knew what they had with Biden, so it
oh
wasn't
yeah,
very difficult.
yeah,
And now they have to figure out, okay, well, what are we going after? And like, that's the fuck, like, that's the thing that just, it's so dumb. And just, again, it's a frustrating thing with these far right conservatives, that they did the same thing to Obama. They literally did the same thing to Obama of, well, is he actually American? Where's his birth certificate? Like why is that part of the conversation? We are
yeah,
losing sight of what the actual issue is here. And then when you say things like that, you give the other side so much fuel to be like, what is wrong with you? Um, and that's, again, like, she has an Indian mother, I think, and a Jamaican father.
yes, that is correct. I
Yeah.
agree.
So, like, dude, it doesn't. Who cares who you are? You are
She was born in
doing.
the
You're barking
States.
up the tree for no reason.
She was born in the
And
States.
then again,
Yeah.
in the same breath, though, you look at Kamala when she's in Atlanta and speaking with an inner city Southern draw of, like, what's the term that they use? They have a term for that now, which, because they have a term for everything in. I want to say it's like, Oh gosh, I'm gonna look this up before I butcher it. It's like term used when you change how you speak to other groups.
Just with like your dialect or whatever, or
Yeah, well, just
your
yeah. It's
accent, changing your
code switching, changing the way you talk, code switching.
yeah.
Of like the way that I would talk to my group of friends would be different than the way I would talk to my parents, or the way that I would talk to people in Southern Alabama would be different than the way I would talk to people in freaking
New
North
York
Dakota,
City,
you
right,
know.
or North Dakota,
Which
right.
that was funny actually. I saw my uncle recently who's from North Dakota, and he was all like, "Oh yeah, those Canadians, eh?" And I was like, "What are you talking? Like, are you looking at the mirror? Because those Canadians are you, buddy. Like, I don't
You
know what we're
hoser,
even going on about here."
you hoser.
But no, it's just
Oh man.
it's one of those things where we are losing sight so fast. We have obviously Trump has done the whole Kid Rock thing, and then you have Kamala having Megan the Stallion twerk her butt cheeks out
God.
in front of it. Like we have it is again.
Lowest common denominator.
I strongly encourage our listeners, and V, I encourage you if you have HBO Max, go watch the douche and turd episode of South Park, where it is one of the greatest ones ever, where they have to vote for a new school mascot and they are stuck to vote between a giant douche and a turd sandwich. And we are this is where
Oh
we're at.
my
This is where
God.
we are at with it. We are stuck with a giant douche and a turd sandwich. And
Oh, that's great.
yeah, yeah.
The
So it's a very, very good
oh
episode
man,
of South
that's
Park. But
the giant
yeah.
douche and the. Oh my God, that deserves one. That here, I got a new button on the soundboard by the way. That deserves a.
Oh my God!
Well,
Yes.
and while we're visiting, before we talk about Matthew Harris for a little bit last part of our show, numbers that have come out, uh, reports. So in the last, well, we've heard this. So in the first 24 hours
Mhm.
after Biden said I'm out, and Kamala said that she was in. Okay, in the first 24 hours, $150 million in the first 24 hours. Okay, the last 2 weeks of July, Harris raised over 310 million. Okay,
Wow.
the let's see what else was there. Democrats raised 24 million through their Act Blue platform. When they announced that Tim Walz was going to be her running mate, and this there was a case that happened in 2010. For those who just really brief, it's called the Citizens United versus the Federal Election Commission. I actually talk about this case in my class. That basically has said now that any limits on campaign financing is a limit on free speech because money and this was, by the way, this wasn't a Republican court. This was a more liberal court that said money equals speech. No matter where
Hmm.
it's coming from, it's people's money wanting to get the speech forward about their person. Now, the Federal Election Commission still it's understaffed and overworked. There's no way. I mean, there are so many loopholes in campaign contribution laws that you can give X amount of dollars directly. I actually think it's less than $10,000 that you personally can give directly to a candidate. But if I want to go through, I want to go through the Republican National Committee, or I want to go through what was the Democrat super PAC's called Future Forward. Okay, so they don't necessarily claim to support Kamala Harris, but whoever their candidate is has access to that
Mm.
money, and so it's a loophole. Well, we're not direct, and then you have these concerned citizens, citizens to reelect such and such, or citizens to, and these are called 504 groups. These 504
Hmm.
groups can give I mean, and they don't even, and the thing about these 504 groups, they don't have to report at all how much
Right.
money they give to I mean, because they're a privately, uh, the first time I had ever heard about a 504 group was when John Kerry was running against President Bush for re-election, George W. And John Kerry had made all these claims that he was on a gunboat in Vietnam during the Vietnam War, and there was this group, I forget, it was a famous group. They called it was like this group that was called. It was basically all these gunboat vets got together and formed this little 504, and they got a bunch of these Vietnam vet and tons of these Vietnam vets just started pouring money into this little 504, and I mean, they plastered ads all over the place. This guy never saw a day in a. We can guarantee he never saw a day in a gunboat in Vietnam. Okay,
Mm.
and so I think that's really. And when you're looking at the election now, Newsweek came out today. Newsweek came out today and said, even though with all of this money that's being poured in, because in the last election, so Joe Biden got 101 more electoral votes than Trump did. He won in the battleground states, Georgia, North Carolina, Virginia,
Mm-hmm.
Michigan, Wisconsin, and Pennsylvania. And now in those states, and this, they said the chance of that, and they called that a landslide. In their terms, that was a landslide. I don't know if I'd say 101 political or electoral college votes is a landslide.
Mm-hmm.
But they're, these nobody's going to say this is probably going to be so close that, I mean, we're not going to know on Wednesday who the president is after the election. There's no way, at least in my mind, there's no way that we're gonna know who the president is for, I would say, at least a week. And I guarantee you that both sides, it depends on who's on the losing end of the stick. Both sides are already got their team ready in the wings to protest or to challenge election results in whatever state or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
So, but anyway, the last thing I kind of want to touch on, we got a little bit of time here. I do want to bring up, and part of this is because I am a huge Friends fan. I'm one of those nerds who I can say this looking straight into the camera. I have watched every season of Friends, and I know this because when I have my Netflix account, I've watched every season 13 times.
Nice.
And I know Friends like you guys know stuff about Breaking Bad and all that the shows that you and Travis always used to talk about and everything. And Matthew Perry, it was like, to me, it was just like, you felt, to my generation, you watched that show, you looked at that show, and you saw it as a kind of a connection to a group of friends. You looked at them as friends, as your friends, And what was really sad, Matthew Perry had struggled with he'd had, I think it was, I don't know if it was an accident that happened on the show or if it was something in between seasons when he started his addiction to pain pills, and then it just led down the road to other drugs. He was talking about, I saw in one interview that he can't even, he said during, I think it was either season 4 or season 5, he said he didn't remember 3/4 of those episodes. It was just like he was so,
that's crazy.
He was so strung out that but he, being a professional, being able to go through this. No, so fast forward then to when he was found. I guess it was October. I think it was in October of last year. I think it was when he died, and he was found in his passed out in his pool by his assistant. And the death was attributed to ketamine. Okay. And ketamine was the same thing that killed Michael Jackson too, wasn't it? Was that? It was basically it's
Mm,
ketamine.
I don't. Oh, that's
I
a
don't. I don't.
good. I don't know if I honestly think it was.
It was something along that same line, though, wasn't it? To help him sleep, or but you
Acute
know,
propofol intoxication.
oh, that's what. Okay, yeah. So
Yeah, it was like a combination of prescription drugs. I'm gonna butcher this: benzopazine,
yeah, yeah.
propofol, and lorazepam. Yeah.
Okay, Lord, yeah. But ketamine is that kind of that.
Mm.
I don't want to call it a drug cocktail, but it's kind of this drug that they give you to put you into like the twilight sleep right before you go out. You know, um, the only reason why I'm familiar with ketamine is because whenever my kids had dental surgery, I just remember that they before they totally put them out, they gave them ketamine to kind of slow them down and it has kind of a I have a video somewhere. My daughter would kill me if she knew that I was talking about this, but I have a video somewhere
Hmm.
before and they'd given her the ketamine, and I mean really tiny dose again for a little kid, but she started talking about stuff she was seeing, and it's a hallucinogenic, but it calms you down, you know, and according to certain websites, it's also used for pain management and for treatment of depression in very super mild dosage. Okay,
Hmm.
so today, uh, Matthew, there were 5 people who were arrested today. One was I love this Jasveen Sangha, who is called the Ketamine Queen of North Hollywood. Salvador Placencia, unfortunate name, but this was one. He's a doctor in Hollywood, or no, Santa Monica. Eric Fleming, Keith Owasma, who was his personal assistant slash manager, and then another doctor, Dr. Mark Chavez, 54. This guy Fleming, though, this guy Eric Fleming was basically this guy who was he was the go-between the quote unquote ketamine queen and and uh, and Matthew Perry's assistant. And one of
Hmm.
the things one of the pieces of evidence that has already been, I don't know, leaked out or how it got out, but it was, there was a text between two of them that was like, how much money do you think we can get out of this moron about, I really people who, to me, I'm sorry, but to me, drug dealers are right in that realm of scum that's right below. I don't care if it's this really high end drug, or if it's a, whatever the cosmopolitan drug is, like ketamine,
Hmm.
or I mean, something that's becoming more of a problem now, fentanyl. I mean, people look at it as, okay, if I have an addiction, you look at Matthew Perry, who was trying to be clean and who was trying to, but he's fighting depression, and he's fighting,
Hmm.
if I can just get another hit of, the ketamine, and to say, and people think that this is a big city problem too, with drugs in our local small county here, where you and I both reside at. It amazes me in the 22 years that I've been here how much more prevalent and I say hard drugs. When you guys were in school, and even when I mean, pot was everywhere when I started teaching 27 years ago.
Hmm.
You could get, and I mean, I can tell you right now, what student if I wanted to buy pot right now, I can tell you exactly what student I could go to get pot.
Hmm. Yeah.
But now I can unfortunately tell you now, a former student now who's a graduate of Clopton and who works locally here, you know, kids are, reported back to me saying, "Oh yeah, this such and such is selling, fentanyl laced vapes." You know, and
Oh yeah. I remember you telling
and
me about that.
and
Yeah.
how is something like this becoming so prevalent in our society? I mean, if we're such an it's like our addictive culture has really. I mean, I just never thought that I would see a time like this. I mean, my brothers always talked about during my one brother was born
Hmm.
in the 50s. He's turning 65 this year. And he talks about going to high school in the 70s and how, you know, LSD and acid, and then during the 80s it kind of went to cocaine, but it kind of moved out. It was more of a big city thing. Pot was just like the poor man's drug. But
Mm.
now fentanyl, ketamine, I mean prescription drugs, just the overabundance of prescription drugs that are available that people are. I
Hmm.
mean, as simple as
Yeah.
kids going and, hey, I'm gonna go get some Xanax from my parents' medicine cabinet, and I'm gonna
Hmm.
distribute that. I mean, what was it in your when you were in high school? What did you witness as probably the most prevalent drug that was going through our school? That was
I would say the big three were alcohol. Um, Marijuana was there, but at least like in the group that I was around, not really. I'm sure there were others that were in that group. I might have been the square out. But like, I worked at a restaurant and worked with a bunch of people that were in their mid 20s, 30s, 40s that were smoking weed all the time. So I was around it all the time,
yeah,
but it was just, I had stuff that I was doing. Um, and then like cough syrup. Cough syrup was, triple C's and things like that. That was kind of like if you weren't smoking pot, you didn't want to get caught with alcohol, you could, no one's going to really, I mean, people might like know, but you can't really get in trouble for having a bottle of Robitussin in your car, so.
well, and it was about your time that I became that a drug I was reintroduced to the area. I remember a couple of kids in your class having issues with Molly,
Hmm.
which that's like ecstasy, I believe it. Molly's like ecstasy or speed or
Yeah,
something.
yeah, yeah.
And so, you know, it you almost can't be naive anymore. We can't as a society, as a group of people, as people who are, we can't be naive that, oh, that's never going to happen in try that in a small town. Well, it is happening in a small town. It's happening. And this whole thing with what happened with Matthew Perry, I hope is a kind of a reminder. Even though he's a celebrity, I mean, you look at this poor guy and what he went through. But man, the
Hmm.
prevalence of drugs in our society just blows me. Just it. I mean, we had an issue with cocaine in our school district last year, and
Hmm.
not to go into I mean, but Pike County cocaine, really?
Yeah,
So I thought we were just the meth capital of the world, but who knew?
yeah,
So
yeah. I mean, and that's sad. Like, I hear about some of the stuff that, people are doing, and it just goes to show that it's just more accessible. Like if teenagers
mm,
are getting their hands on it, like, I mean, I could be very wrong, but I don't recall many teenagers at when I was growing up getting their hands on coke, getting their hands on heroin, getting their hands on meth, getting their hands on ecstasy. I could be very wrong, because I'm sure that there were, but it wasn't as like prevalent. It's like, hey, we know these people are actively doing these things, and it's loud, and it'd be different if like, because you and I have talked like, hey, do you recall in the past 20 years this being like a thing, and you even said no,
mm,
every now and then there might be a ones or twosy kind of thing, but it's like, oh no, not to say that this is the case, but it's like the basketball teams all doing crack. Like it's kind of like
yeah,
it's a larger group and there's like again, it's things like that and other issues that have happened before are like why my kid is not riding the bus until she is much older
right.
to like understand what certain things are. um, and how to express it to her mom and myself. Um, hey, I saw this today. That like that's the kind of thing, because now she might not get it. And God, I tell you, the horror stories that I have heard, and I know this is just, of what kids in second and third and fourth grade
yeah.
alone are doing to other kids in their own grade is sickening. Like, scary stuff. Like, one of those things where it's like, Tony and I, where we're like, should we homeschool our kid? What's the what?
And
But I am very confident in the
yeah.
do what.
I said that's becoming a more, and that's
Yeah.
I mean
Yeah.
that's outside even religious circles. I mean, people are moving to homeschooling their kids just for the fact that it's not school. I mean, we do a great job at our school, not to pat ourselves on the back too hard, but we do a good job at our school of keeping our kids safe. But we're also a rural district that's out in the middle of nowhere. But you're right. I mean, you hear these horror stories of, kids saying graphic things, sexually graphic things in second, third, whereas
Oh yeah.
whereas if I was in kindergarten, the big deal was, hey, Johnny's peeing off the, off the doorstep or something, but
yeah. And it's like, one of those things, like, as a parent, like, the hard part of me is like, if some second grader was to expose my second grader to something crazy like that, like, me personally, I feel like I am entitled to go whoop the ass of the parents of that other second grade.
Definitely.
Of like, how shitty of a parent are you that your fucking kid is doing this in second grade? Like, I had the conversation with Tony and I were just talking about this, and I know we're veering towards the end of it, but we were just talking about how, like, so I remember when I was younger, there was a very brief period, because it didn't last very long. There's a very brief period of time where, like, my parents had blocked, like, TV mature shows on, like, a direct TV. And it was solely, I know that the sole reason was because there was a small chunk of time where they didn't want me watching South Park. And at the time, South Park was mostly like dick and fart jokes. That was the extent of really what it truly was at the end of the day. And obviously, now there's so much more that goes into a lot of that stuff. But it's like, even the I had to, if I wanted to, for during that period of time, go watch it, I had to, like, go to someone else's house where they had the DVDs, and then I could watch it. But it's like, now everything is just so readily accessible, and
it's unbelievable.
It is, talking with everyone that I know that's in the teacher sphere or in the education sphere has said, like, look, there's just this bulk of parents that are in their early 40s to their early 20s that just are shitty at being parents. And wherein lies the issue of, if they're too busy, if they're they're working, the stress of everything, they are gentle parenting because they feel like they had it to, whatever the reason is, because now more than ever, because of how much access that kids have, now more than ever is the time where parents just need to be parents. And
you're right, and not just say, hey, we're buddies or we're friends or whatever.
Of just, hey, like, and I think it's also like, this is, there's a huge difference between, like, if you had a parent that was abusive or that was negligent, and obviously that can have an effect on you, and then how you think you're going to parent whenever it's time for you to parent. But there's other people that didn't have those issues, that hear about people that had actual issues. They want to create issues for themselves, and they remember a time that their parents yelled at them in third grade or fifth grade or in high school that, no, you can't go out and ride on that 23-year-old man's motorcycle. You're a kid. You're going to do kid things. And they then turn that into, oh, I have these I have issues, and now I'm going to gentle parent and let my kid do what they want, and not let them
I want my kids to
feel
be able
left
to
out, and don't
experience
let
fun.
them get
Yeah.
bullied. And it's
Yeah.
just
I'll end with this, that in especially in times such as these, now more than ever, with the, like we said, with the prevalence of drugs, with the easy access to whatever. Goodness gracious, it terrifies me that that I'm a parent of 2 teenagers, and I have their phones. I mean, call me a Nazi, call me what you will, but I monitor the crap out of what my kids take in on their phone. I get a report every week from Apple that tells me what they're, what sites they're, and I have lockdown. You can't go to these sites, these sites, these sites, these sites, these sites. It's it's overwhelming. One other thing, Bill, I want to mention before we sign off tonight. I turned 50 this week. Turned 50 on Monday. Saturday night, we had a get together out here at the house, and actually a number of people came up to me and said, "Hey, we really enjoy it." We have people who listen to the podcast that I had no idea listened to the podcast, and
nice.
But I just want to thank everybody. Janine thinks we had over 150 people at our
Man, that's awesome.
And it's very humbling for me to, I about broke down crying, talking to people and just saying, hey, thank you for coming. I know our star fan who usually listens every week, Jonathan Guthrie, his family came over, and it was great to see them.
Nice.
But, just seeing all of our friends and just seeing people who have touched my life in some way or shape or another, and it's really humbling. But I just wanted to take the opportunity to thank everybody who came over, who came in. A lot of people who couldn't make it. Sean had some stuff going on. He texted me, "Hey man, I'm not going to be able to make it," but
Yeah, there were some funeral duties calling.
Yeah, and I was like, dude, go take care of the funeral stuff, man. Don't worry about me. But thank you for everybody who came, and it was awesome. It was great. So
well, for everyone that followed along with us live, and for those that are going to listen throughout the week, these next couple of weeks, just bear with us. Might be a little bit wonky. I've got some schooling that I'm doing, so I don't know exactly what my availability is going to be. So hopefully V and I are going to work together to cook up some good guests to be on the show in my absence when I'm absent. And but when I do get back, if I don't talk to you beautiful people for the next couple of weeks, hopefully, I feel like the last time, when we took a break, all shit hit the fan. So hopefully, if just one of us takes a break for a couple of weeks, then it won't be as bad. So we'll have to see how it goes. So.
Yeah.
But again, be a friend, tell a friend. Thank you all so much for joining us. For our viewers that are live on Facebook and TikTok, thank you guys so much, and we'll talk to you guys soon.
We'll see you.
Thanks for listening to the Voice of Reason podcast. Check out our previous shows and clips on Facebook, YouTube, and TikTok.